One thing I ask of you. Throughout this month leading up to the High Holy Days, we are taught to say these words each day. Some Jews incorporate this recitation of Psalm 27, or Achat Sha'alti, as a part of their Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur prep work, accompanying this song with the daily call of the shofar. Psalm 27 has a message for us through these days of spiritual soul-seeking and preparation. This week has been an emotional one for our country, and especially the state of Arizona. As Rabbi Khan shared with us, and we know, tonight marks the first Shabbat since the death of U.S. Senator John McCain. I can only say he was my senator for a few short weeks since coming here from California, but his legacy of commitment to the core values of America serves as an inspiration to so many of us here in Arizona and around our country. As I'm sure you've read, Senator McCain left a letter for us. He left this world with a clear, concise message for his fellow Americans and especially his fellow Arizonans. With the words of Achat Sha'alti ringing in my ears, I am moved by the way that he, a man whose life had so many complex chapters, spoke to all of us at the end of his life. He asked of us one clear thing. Achat Sha'alti, one thing I ask of you. If only we remember, Senator McCain wrote, that we have always had so much more in common with each other than in disagreement. If only we give each other the benefit of the presumption that we all love our country, we will get through these challenging times. We will come through them stronger than before. As we mourn, Senator McCain left us one message, asking just one thing to remember what we have in common. Our shared love, pride, and commitment to our country will bring us through challenging times. It is a unique soul who, at the end of a life with many chapters, can leave a world as complicated as ours with a single message. Take a moment to consider. If you were asked what one message you would like to live on as your legacy, what would it be? I am quite sure that I would not have a message but a list, a long list. It would probably have footnotes and maybe even chapter headings. Directing our lives towards a single goal is limiting and, frankly, harder than carrying a long list of dreams. Elie Wiesel famously wrote that we must see in every person a universe with its own secrets, with its own treasures, with its own sources of anguish and some measure of triumph. Each one of us is a complex, multifaceted being with ever-changing hopes, dreams, and desires. And yet, as we enter this period of sacred time and space, there is wisdom in centering ourselves on a single request. In this week's Parsha, Ki Tavo, Moses is preparing to take his final breaths. As the Israelites are looking to the horizon and anticipating new life in the Promised Land, he crafts his last speech. Though the Parsha is long, including laws of tithing and a long litany of blessings and curses, we'll study that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the last few verses are quite simple. Moses gathers the Israelites. He reminds them of how far they've come, and then he says, Ushmartam et divrei habrit hazot, va'asitem otam lema'an tishkilu et kol asher ta'asun. Observe faithfully all the terms of this covenant, that you may succeed in all that you undertake. After 40 years of adventure and transition and tragedy and freedom, Moses centers his final speech on a single faithful message. Achat Sha'alti, one thing does Moses ask, that we keep our end of the agreement with God. The message is simple, but as Moses prepares to leave this world, its impact cuts right to our souls. When our loved ones die, Our tradition guides us through our grief. During Shiva and Shloshim, our immediate mourning periods, we tell our loved ones stories. We look at pictures and recall favorite anecdotes in the hopes of keeping a part of them with us. In retelling the story of their lives, we seek to understand their message. What one thing would our loved one ask of us? Even more difficult to consider is our own death. It is uncomfortable to imagine, perhaps unfathomable, but the High Holy Days, particularly Yom Kippur, are not just about honey cake and breaking the fast. Yom Kippur gently takes our hand, walking us from the comfort of the living to the questions of beyond. During the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, we confront our limited time here on earth. We read, "Who shall live and who shall die? Who shall reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast?" These words are haunting and true. We cannot control our actions, and we can control our actions, but we cannot control our end. On Yom Kippur, we mimic God's angels, going without food, sometimes wearing white, perhaps avoiding leather, immersed in prayer and abstaining from life's comforts. On Yom Kippur, we are flirting with this other realm, while we beat our chests and recite our missed marks. And in this hungry, humble haze, we ask ourselves, am I living my life the way that I want to be remembered? Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. One thing I ask of you, God, for which I earnestly pray. Psalm 27 urges us to ask ourselves, what is my one thing, my one message? For what one thing do I earnestly pray? For what one thing do I live? If we learn any lesson from repeating these words, it is that this is not just the work of this month, this is the work of our lives. The days of awe can help steer us towards self-discovery. They can help us see our true selves when we face our own reflection. Rosh Hashanah will be here in just over a week, with Yom Kippur following closely behind. Throughout our time together, we will be moved by prayer, we will be deep in thought, we will join in song, and there may also be times when our eyes will wander, our thoughts will drift, and instead of using that time to count the light bulbs or plan your break fast, perhaps instead consider, what is my one thing? What do I stand for? What do I live for? Achat sha'alti, one thing I ask, that this season inspire the holy work of searching, for the search will guide us through the holy work of living.